normally do. Someone was talking to me about my outfit this evening, and I think someone said that your shirt quacks them up. Obviously from the sermon for this morning, and I said, well, I thought it fit the bill. That's why I wore it. But anyway, this was a gift that was given to me by some of the brethren in Cameroon one year after our seminar and so forth. And I thought, why would they give you such a orange and loud shirt? And the only thing I could think of was maybe it's a defensive kind of shirt for when you ride on motorcycles so everybody can see you and you stand out a little bit. So maybe that's why they did it. This guy here says it's because I'm a tourist. Let me tell you what. Going to Cameroon, West Africa is no tourism thing. Listen, since 1986, I've been going over to West Africa from 86 to 98. I went to Ghana, West Africa, and all those trips were of an evangelistic nature. We did evangelism every day and most evenings and so forth. Since that time, from 98 to present, I've been going to Cameroon, and the mission there is a little bit different. What I do now is I go over and I train itinerant preachers. Most of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you this evening are things that you probably already know. I think this is my 9th trip since serving here at this congregation. So you've seen a lot and heard a lot about what Cameroon is about. I thought what I might do is share with you maybe a few little things you don't know about, and then just to remind you of why I do the mission work that I go on and so forth. So let me just talk to you basically about the reason why we go there is to encourage the church. And we do it through education and instruction. In the time that I'm there, I'll speak to probably around 150 to 200 men that we'll be training. About 30 or 40 of them are on the French side, which is in Douala. And then maybe 150 or 100 plus are over in Kumba, which is on the English side of the country itself. And so forth. So we go there to encourage and just to educate and to strengthen them. And you'll see why here in a few moments. This year, Lori's going to be going with us, and I think our 3rd trip that we made to Cameroon, we began to take a woman with us and allowed the women to be taught. Before that, it was just the men that were being taught. And the men, we talked to the men about this. We asked, well, would you like for us to maybe come over and instruct your ladies? And they said that would be a really good idea. And we said, well, what would you want us to teach them? They said, well, we'd like for you to teach them how to be better wives, how to get up earlier in the morning, to draw the water, to warm up their bath. And I told them, I said, you don't want our women for that. And so basically what we've done is up to the time that we went there, they didn't have children's Bible classes. They didn't have ladies' Bible classes or anything of that nature. And since our trips going there beginning in 98, today they have children's classes in most of their congregations, even in the bush congregations, as well as ladies' classes. So we have gained a lot of ground, and you'll see some of the reason for it. Of course, like I mentioned to you, that Lori is going to go with me this year. She hasn't been, I think, in like 6 years. I think her last trip was in 2012, and hasn't been able to go since then. But now she's going to go with me this year, and she'll be teaching the women. The man that you'll see there that's about me is Jim Corner, and he's a fellow that I've been traveling to Africa with since I believe 1990 or 91. And I've been going with him on evangelism trips as well as seminar trips and so forth. Cameroon, it has about 210 congregations there. They range anywhere from 5 to 225 members. When I say 225 members, there's a congregation in the north that might be up there. Kumba Town, which is where we hold our 2nd seminar, they may be a congregation that has a membership of around 225 members. So, but most of them are fairly small congregations. Only about 16 men are full-time preachers. And even those 16 men are supported by people out of the United States. And so we help keep these guys in the field and so forth. There's one preacher who is in Cockgate too, and he is fully supported by his congregation, which is an anomaly in Africa. But nevertheless, we were supporting him for a lot of years. And then as time went on, we began to wean him off of U.S. support, and his congregation picked up that support. Most of the congregation, in fact, probably 95% of the congregation, they're not able to do that just because of the poverty level that is there. And so all the other preachers that are in Cameroon are itinerants, which means they may have been to a school of preaching, or they may be the guys that we have been training and teaching and so forth, but they are mostly are farmers, or they are merchants of some kind, and so they work all through the week, and then they preach on Sundays and maybe even Wednesday nights and so forth. Some of the men that preach there preach for more than one congregation, some up to 3 congregations, maybe even 4 congregations that they travel through on a Sunday and so forth. And so almost all the preachers there are itinerants, and a farmer makes very little money. A farmer may make anywhere from $50 to maybe a couple $100 in a year after he does his harvest and so forth. And most of them are, when they farm as a bumper crop cocoa or something of that nature, and then they grow plantain and cassava and different kinds of vegetables and so forth to feed their family, but also to barter in the villages as well. Some of them will raise a couple of pigs, or they might raise goats or something of that kind of nature, and then they do a lot of bartering. And I said all this simply to say to you that the itinerant preachers are extremely valuable to the Cameroon work, but they are very poorly paid to do so. So not only do they farm, but then they work. One young man that I know of that is a farmer, he has a plot of land, and you would think of a plot of land that it's not far from his village, but it'll take him maybe a day or so to walk out to his farm. Then he'll farm it and work it. It's this plot of ground and so forth, whether it's bananas or whether it's plantain or cocoa or whatever it might be that he's growing there. And he'll stay there maybe 3 nights, sleep underneath a banana leaf, and then will walk back to town there, and then he'll prepare for Sunday and the preaching of the services that are there. So they're extremely hard workers, and they're stretched mightily when it comes down to their work that is there. Many Christian congregations, they don't have an adequate supply of songbooks. And we have songbooks everywhere. Sometimes you'll see them walking into the church building with a songbook on their head. Not everyone will have a songbook. They have very few songbooks. Many of the Christians there do not have even a Bible. The congregations are diverse. They have from very young to very old, but probably the main body of the church is probably more younger in nature, younger Christians and so forth. Some of them, like I said, have been trained to be preachers. They went to a preaching school, maybe in Nigeria or over into Ghana. Today there is a church right outside of Boya that the Bear Valley School of Preaching is help-sponsoring there. They prepare preachers to go out into the field. I'm not sure exactly what those guys are going to do after they get out into the field. My guess is they're going to go and get a really good education, and then they're going to go out into the field, and there's not going to be a congregation that can support them unless some American steps up and pays for their wage. And so they'll probably end up back as farmers and as merchants or something like that in order to feed their families, and then they'll preach and bring the good word regardless. The majority of congregations in Cameroon are spiritually weak. Weak in terms of knowledge, certainly not in terms of spirit. When you combine that with their poverty and some of their weakness, then they're not super great givers, and so their preachers are not supported. So they're not fully supported as, say, Clint and myself are. So this prohibits to some degree the growth of the gospel because it just can't reach out, and so it really lies at the body's responsibility to do the evangelism, and yet it's somewhat difficult to them because of their knowledge of the scriptures and their spiritual maturation and so forth in carrying out the mission. So the goal of the mission work in Cameroon is many, but for me, my job is the leadership training seminars. And in the leadership training seminars, I teach men how to do various kinds of sermons. I'll teach them how to do a topical sermon, or how to do a textual sermon, or how to do an expository sermon. I might train them in how to study the Bible without any kind of help or any kinds of notes or anything like that, but just to be able to, how do you break down an introduction to a book? How do you break down a chapter? How do you break down a paragraph? How do you break down polemical books, things of that nature? But how do you go about doing that kind of work? I might train them in how to develop leadership or leadership strategy or vision strategies, all kinds of things I teach them. Sometimes I'm topical in nature. I might teach them about grace, which sometimes they really need a lot of that because they're very works-oriented and so forth. So about grace and things of that nature. So our work that I do has to do with leadership, training in leadership and equipping those men there how to go and do their work as itinerants in their congregation. The ultimate goal, of course, is to help the congregation to eventually become self-sustaining, where they can do the work without American help. Someone asked Jim what his plan B was, and he said, "My plan B is you guys. You know, there will come a day when I get too old, I'll die, I won't be coming back to Africa. I've already told Jim, when you quit, I'm quitting. You know, when you die, I don't plan on dying, but anyway, but plan B is that the church is going to pick up the load and start carrying the load. So that's going to be, that's the end goal, really. So when you look at 1 Timothy, or 2 Timothy, the 2nd chapter and verse 2, if you were to read that, then Paul, of course, says, you know, the things that you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, these take and give to faithful men, who will then take that same message and give that to faithful men. And so it's the pyramid principle, is that we continue to share our faith. And so that's what we do. We try to equip men in order that they might be able to equip others and train others as well. So the seminar consists of, it's two-pronged. Other than travel days and so forth, there will be a week or 5 days spent in Kumatown, which is where we'll start. And we'll get there on a Saturday, and I'll preach on Sunday morning and evening, teach a Bible class, and then begins the seminar at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. And we'll go to about 5:30 in the evening with a 2-hour break in between, and we'll do that throughout the week. And then we'll travel back to Douala, and on Saturday I'll preach on Sunday, teach on Sunday, and so forth, and then we'll begin the seminar, only this time we'll be doing it on the French side. And so that's how the seminars are conducted. And I've already told you what that's all about. Lori will be training the women and such thing as evangelism, the roles of wives and mothers, how to teach children, Bible classes, and more, and I'll be training the men that is there. The yearly seminars, from what we've been told from the brethren there, are probably one of the most important events that happens to the congregation in that year's period, because so many people come to listen to it, because it strengthens the Cameroonian congregation in a great kind of way. Here are a few of the comments that we have heard from brethren who have attended the seminars. At the end of our seminars, we give them survey sheets and we ask them to comment on various kinds of things. And here are some of the things that they said. They said, continue in this same manner of visiting Cameroon by exercising your teaching experience. I'm really impressed with the manner in which you presented your lessons. I wish you more grease to your elbows, which means you're doing a really good job. Here are some of the other things that they have said. I pray that God gives you the grace to continue coming in such rich lessons. It will enable us to impact the lives of others and to boost our faith. Growth is a continual and gradual process, but the seminar is helping that mission. The seminar is useful because those who attend are being enlightened and ignorance is being shifted to the corner. The material is well and carefully designed, and the leaders can easily teach it to our members. You know, what I do here is I hand you sermon notes, and I give you blanks over there. They get notes for all the lessons that I teach, but there's no blanks there, so they can actually take the same lessons I'm teaching them, and they can take and transfer those into the congregations that they represent. We generally ask that they send no more than 2 members to the seminar, because it'd just be overflowing with people. And so you figure it out, if there's 225 congregation, you had 2 members from each one came to it, it'd be just gigantic. And so it's just overwhelming for us, and so we've had to reduce it to some degree. The seminar is successful because it helps to open our brains to the Word of God. I have seen that the seminars have done a lot to not only teach our children, but ourselves. The next generation will not know you, but they will know you through the mark you have left behind. Sister Louise, this is from last year's seminar, you are a blessing in my life. You have given me what I could not buy from the market, and it is knowledge, and I will ask God for wisdom. God bless you. So, I mean, we can't buy this, you can't purchase this, and so you're coming and giving it to as a gift. So they're extremely valuable to them. So, we'll leave January the 30th, and we'll fly to Paris, and from Paris we will directly connect to a flight and fly to Douala, And we'll get there and we'll sleep through the night, and then the next morning we'll begin preparation for the seminar, which means we'll have to go out and do some shopping and buying materials and things of that nature. And then Sunday we'll be in full mode of working and so forth. But we will get there, I think we'll get there on like a Thursday. We shop on Friday. We travel on Saturday. We'll get there on Sunday. So we will travel to Kumba Town. Takes us most of the day. We'll get to our hotel. This here is the Villanello that is behind me. I'm told that they have a new, Jim is telling me that we have a new hotel that's in Kumba now, and he says it's the bomb, which I've seen what he thinks the bomb is when it comes down to, because he thought this one was. And so anyway, so we'll go to this fairly newer hotel and so forth, which means it may have toilet seats or it may not. And but as soon as after we get there, we'll kind of put our things away and we'll organize a little bit. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Ma Dai's orphan's home. And as I've told you in the past, her name is Diana, and she is a widowed single woman. And people bring children to her to raise. And sometimes she'll get up in the morning and a baby will be on her doorstep or at the step of her door and will be just left there. And she will take that baby in and she will raise that baby. And she has raised several generations of children now on her own before even we come to knowledge of her. But now we've kind of a little bit taken her under our wing to some degree and tried to help her as much as possible. At any given time, she probably has 30 to 40 children that she has there at that little house that is there. Can you guys see that really well? Oh yeah, I guess you can see it better than what I'm looking at. But they're absolutely incredible children that are there. They range anywhere from being little bitty tiny infants just newly born all the way up into children that are in 18, 19, 20 years old. And she not only raises them physically and tries to meet their physical needs, but she really helps them come to a knowledge of the Lord. And many of her children have become Christians, are very strong in the church, and have gone beyond Kumba into various other places and villages and so forth, and have taken their faith with her. And so when you go to church on Sunday morning in Kumba Town, there's always a fairly large section of little children that are there, and most of those children there are Ma Dai's children. So the orphanage is just a great way to help with the mission work that is there. Generally, when I go there, and if I take money with me from you people here or from other congregations, then we end up buying hundreds of pounds of rice. We buy beans. I always take several bags of candy with me that I take over with me, and I usually plan on using it throughout the trip and end up usually almost giving it all right there. So I lose all my Skittles and I lose all my all the different kinds of candies that they can't get there that I can from America. So that's what happens there. You can kind of see they wash their clothes and then they hang them out and so forth. The center bottom picture is the well that they draw their water from and so forth. So that's Ma Dai that's standing between Lori and I, and there's Jim surrounded by all these little children. And they absolutely love it when we go there. When we go there, they usually have us come in and we sit down and we encourage them, and they usually sing us maybe 3 or 4 songs, and we have a prayer with them, and Jim usually has a little short message that he'll talk to them about and tell them how much we love them, and of course, and then we'll go and look at some other things that are around the campus there and so forth. Then we, on Sunday, of course, we'll go out and we'll preach surrounding congregations in that area there, mostly our village churches, and Jim and myself will go to various ones. I'll go to Smalakambe or Bigakambe or Taketu or someplace like that. And sometimes I've preached in Kumba itself, Kumba Town itself. But anyway, when we will teach class in the morning and preach in the morning, and then sometimes even in the evening. I pointed this picture out here. This is the congregation in Kaketu, and I pointed the arrow to that is a tin roof called zincs, but they are a galvanized tin that we purchased. So the idea is that what we tell them, we used to build congregations. Remember early on that we as a congregation, we paid for Smalakambe's church building. I mean, we did it from the ground up. We paid for it and so forth. Well, we decided that may not have been the best strategy. So what we have asked congregations to do so that they're more within themselves, because we felt like Smalakambe overbuilt. for the size of the area and the size of their congregation. What we've told congregation is you build to what you think you need your congregation to be. You put the foundation in, you put the walls up, the trusses up, and we will try to gather the money, or we will try to find the money to put roofs, to buy the zincs and put the roofs on your building. Well, we don't put it on, we just buy the zincs for the roof and then they put them on there. And it can range anywhere from $750 to about $200, $2,500 for a roof, depending on the size of the building. But generally about $25 is the max. Most are around about $700, $750 to put the zincs on the roofs there. Talk a little bit more about that later. First seminar is in Town, and I've already told you that you can see the crowds that were teaching there. There's a lot of men that come for my teaching in the morning, and then Jim teaches in the afternoon. And now it's both men and women who are at that time part of the teaching and so forth. Our teaching consists of lecture, and then I do some exercises with them where I break them down into small groups and have them work through some projects and do various kinds of work jobs and so forth. But you can see that there are a lot of guys that come to these things here. You can kind of see Lori and I are sitting there on the right or on the left bottom, and it's like 90 degrees, maybe 95 degrees, and it's that much humidity, and it is terrible. I mean, the first time around, when you hear Jim, the first time around it's kind of interesting. The second time around is brutal, you know. But they live in it and so forth. So. You can see the ladies' class there, top right, and it's usually filled up with ladies. How many ladies would you say that in Kumba? I think in Kumba you can go over 100 women in that. I mean, they're just crammed in there. So many women come for the seminar there. This is outside of Kumba Town, and this is generally about the size of the audience that is going to be there. Probably we're taking this picture probably on Friday, and by Friday they're started to move out, so we miss some people that are there because they're having to travel back home, because many of them travel for a long distance to come to the seminars. Yes? A little bit, yeah, a little bit, because. I think, yeah, that's really true. You know, women play a much more subservient role there than they do here, and that's why we really impress upon them the value of teaching their women and teaching their children, because men are in first place in almost every way, and so we try to equal that out when we teach and so forth. And so it's a delicate kind of conversation. You got to be a little bit careful, but I think there's some truth to that. And that's why we started doing the ladies' classes, because of that very reason. We wanted to elevate them and show their importance. In fact, when we go in Douala, the women, they are taught at the Lawat Hotel where we now stay. And the men, we teach at the congregation there at Cité de la Paix and so forth. And so we teach there, in that hot building. And the women, they are taught at the Lawat Hotel, and they have an air conditioner. And the men are always complaining about that, because they believe they should get the air conditioner and the women should get that. And Jim, he's relentless. He will not let it happen. There's no way. They're never going to get in that place. They're going to stay out there, and that's where they're going to be taught, and that's the end of the story. And he goes over and he buys them cold drinks and gives to the women. And the women tell the men, and so every once in a while I'll say, look, I'll pay for it. Let me buy them in drinks. And so sometimes he'll relent. But he intentionally tries to keep men in their place, I think, by doing that a little bit. This is the ladies' class that you see. That's the ladies' class that attends that seminar. So you can see how packed it is. And they're all in that room right behind them is where they meet. This here is the preachers from the first seminar in Douala, in Kumba. And you'll notice I have circles around their heads. And the ones that are circles around their heads are men who are itinerant preachers. And some of them are full-time, but when I say full-time preacher, I'm not talking about full-time making lots of money preacher. I'm talking about a guy who's paid a meager subsistence to be a full-time preacher. And so what I started doing a number of years ago, I started out with like maybe 4 or 5 guys. And what I would do is I gave them a $50 stipend. I'd give them $50. And some of them that were in towns, I gave $100. Now, if you think about this, to you and me, $50 doesn't seem like all that much money. Well, maybe some of you it might, but to most of us, it doesn't seem like all that. It's not an earth-shattering deal for us to get someone to give us a $50 bill or to even give us a $100 bill. But to them, it's a life-changing thing. Because if you're a farmer and you work all year and what you produce is $50 worth of produce or even $200 worth of produce, and that's it, and you barter for everything else, and all of a sudden you're given a $50 boost or a $100 boost, that's incredible. Dennis Asika, who's a preacher at the Mato village, I remember after I gave him $50 one time, he wrote me and said to me, he says, I've never ever had anyone give me such a gift as this. And my wife thanks you, my children thank you. I mean, he just went on and on. So those are the men that I gave $50 to $100 to. Usually I spend about $1,600 to preachers while I'm there. Give them $50 here, $100 there. Started out with like 4 or 5, and now I do like 16 of them. And so Jim said, so Jim wrote me this year, and he says, are you going to be able to bring money for that? I said, I don't know. It all depends on how generous the congregation is. He goes, well, Dennis has had a really hard year with his crops this year. And in fact, most of the farmers have had really hard problems with their crops. Maybe there's too much rain, fungus, whatever. And he says, is it possible that you can bring a little bit more for Dennis? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, so you can raise the money. I said, it won't make any difference where I raise the money. I said, if I have to put it on a credit card, I'll take care of these guys. These guys will get their money, so they can be assured of that. So what I generally do is I write them a letter. I have pre-made letters up, and I tell them that this money is not from me. This money is from the congregation that support me, and this is their gift to you for the hard work that you're doing. Stay faithful, stay in the faith. Because it'd be very easy for those guys, for them to say, you know what, I got to make money for my family. I don't have time to do this preaching stuff. And them just to stay in their fields all the time, but they don't. And so I just, I give them a little bit of money just to, in my words, just to keep them in the game, just to keep them encouraged and just to encourage them to stay with the work that they're doing. They have the same problem we have. Please turn your phones off. This is the common way around. The way that we travel around both Kumba as well as in Douala is Laura and I ride on the back of a machine. And that's just we can get everywhere much quicker that way. That's going to be fun, Lori. She hadn't done that in a few years. So, help purchase church building roofs. I've already talked to you about that. The building that you see going on behind me is the church building at Small Akambe when they put their building up, or put their roof up in the trusses that were there. And then we travel back from Kumba back to Douala, and Douala we begin our second seminar. It's not as large. You would think Douala is a city of well over a couple million people probably. You would think that the seminars would be stronger, but the church is weaker on the French side than it is on the English side. Because on the English side, the British established it. English, and of course, Americans that went there, they went to where it's easiest to speak. So they went to the English side, and so the church is stronger and larger on the English side of the Littoral River than it is on the other side, which is about 2/3 of Cameroon, which is where they speak French and so forth. So the congregations are smaller and there's less men that come, but nevertheless, about 40 men or so come to the seminar for the teaching that goes on there. And so you can see bottom right-hand side, that's the men that came to the men, will generally come to the men's seminar. Then, of course, in the middle top that's the ladies that come to the women's part of the seminar. I think the congregation, if you look behind the little motorcycle, that's Cité de la Paix, that's the congregation where Jean-Claude était, where he preaches. These brethren here are the people who come from the north part of Cameroon, and so they spend probably almost 4 or 5 days or more traveling. They travel by train, they travel by transport, they travel by foot just to get to the seminar. So it's expensive. Generally, what Jim does, he tries to augment them and helps pay for their travel expenses so they can come for the seminar and so forth. Remember, what you have to remember, people there are extremely poor. I mean, I can't even put it in words how poor they are, but they are extremely poor. And so for them to come, they have to give up a lot in order to come to a seminar for that week. These are the preachers that come to the seminar, and these are the guys that I've helped in the past. So it comes out to about 16 men that I give either anywhere from $50 to $100 to. Sometimes, like with John Claude, because he lives in Douala, or Louis Basai, who now is in Harding, but when he was there, because he lived in that part of the country, or a couple of the other guys who live in. One of the guys lives in Simone lives in Yaoundé. They're bigger cities. It costs a lot more money to live there, and so sometimes I've given them up to $200, to help them. So preachers helped. Children's classes are taught by Lori and so forth. This here is Jean-Claude and Mary. You remember Jean-Claude was married to Catherine, and remember Catherine, I think what it came down to, I think she ended up with pancreatic cancer, and she eventually died of that. And that broke Jean-Claude's heart. And I think I told you at that time that Jean-Claude, he couldn't mourn over that because the Cameroons see that as a weakness. So he had no one to grieve outwardly about the loss of Catherine, who was his mate since he was just a young man and so forth, and with whom he had had a number of children and so forth. And so he, of course, was brokenhearted, but over the time after Catherine had passed, he and Mary, her name was Lafange, her last name was Lafange, I believe, and he met her, and eventually they got married, and they are doing really well right now. So that's a really blessing to him. What can you do to support missions? Well, you can support those who are willing to go on mission efforts. It really gets down to just about that simple. Now, in terms of me, so I'm going to be transparent about this, is the congregation, they pay my plane ticket as well as all the monies that I need while I'm in there for a month. Okay, so the congregation takes care of me 100% of the way. Lori, on the other hand, is a different story. Lori's plane ticket is paid for, but she's about $1,000, maybe $1,500 short of where she needs to be, so she can stay in the country. Otherwise, if she doesn't have the money, she can go over there with me, but she's not going to stay in the same room with me. Is the problem? So she needs that. She needs some help there. But there's other people that are going in our congregation who are going on mission trips. Bailey Patterson is going to be going to Ecuador, and Holly Wheeler is going to be going to the Dominican Republic, and I think they need like $1,800 to make their trips over. Their mission trips to those places there. I think they each have maybe $300 or $400 already, so they're going to be some shy. You can talk some to either Lance Wheeler or Lori Wheeler about Holly, or you can talk to Dana or Rhonda Patterson about Bailey and ask them where they are in terms of their monies and what maybe they need if you want to support that work that is there. But that's incredible that these young women are willing to go on those trips there. Because, those are not first world countries that they're going to, and so for them to go there and to experience what it means to be in the mission field is something that you never know. They might be of the nature that might be what they end up doing. Lori's already mentioned her going to Cameroon. Support full-time workers. If you said, well, you know what, I want to be able to support a preacher and I'm willing to drop $100 a month to get a guy into the field, then we could talk about that, and Jim and I can identify a man that we'd like to make full-time or help encourage to become full-time, and then we could try to raise the support for him. Support men who are willing to go to preacher training schools. I think it costs about $120 a month for a man to go to a preacher training school. And we have one right there right outside of Boya. So, 16 preacher stipend. If you say, well, you know what, I'd like to give $50 or $100, and you gave me a $50 or $100 bill, and you can say, I want that to go to a preacher. Then what I'd do is I'd earmark that money and put it in an envelope, and that's who that. Well, actually, I'd put it in an envelope. I'd have the money. I'd have the name of who you're going to support. And then what I do is when I get over there, I have them change the money from American dollars into French francs to give to those guys. Or you might want to buy Bibles. As I mentioned to you, a lot of the preachers there do not have study Bibles. They may have a Bible, but not a study Bible. Study Bibles are very expensive. Some say, well, why don't you just carry Bibles with you? The problem with that is that they're too much weight. So I can't take the weight. I'm allowed 40 pounds per bag. And so I mean, it takes up so much weight. It's cheaper to buy the Bibles when I get there and so forth. So some of the preachers don't have study Bibles. Many of the members don't have Bibles. And so we buy small Bibles or not super expensive Bibles. But we can buy Bibles for some of the preachers and for some of the members that are there. We can help pay for a roof of a church building. $750 for a church. I mean, think about that. We have so much comfort here with our nice roof, and pretty comfortable pews, and it's warm in the winter, it's cool in the summer, and all those things. Those people don't have that. And so many of the congregation there worship out in the open, or they worship with thatched roofs. Seriously, thatched roofs that they worship under, okay? And their floors are made of dirt, and they have walls that come up about this high here, and then posts that go up, and many of them don't even have pews. They may have wood benches, or they may have a 2x4 or a 4x4 that runs across with 4x4 bottoms, and they sit on the 4x4. You've been there, so you kind of know what I'm talking. Charles has been to Africa, so he kind of knows what I'm talking about. So it's fairly primitive, but they'll go there and they'll stay as long as you want to preach. But we can help pay for a roof on a church building that will keep them out of the rain so that they can worship and so forth. We can help Maudai's orphanage. If you say, well, I want to help there, I want to give to those little children, then I will take that money and I'll earmark the money, and that's what we'll give to Maudai and for the helping of those children. Or it could be medical or surgery needs. When I go there, there's never been a seminar that I haven't went there that at least 1 or 2 members don't die while we're there. Seriously, they die, And there are some who would have died if we had not been there, because we had the money, and they'd come and say, my husband just went into the hospital. He has an appendicitis. They will not do surgery until they have money, and that's the truth. In Africa, in America, if you walk into a hospital, they got to take care of you. In Africa, you can walk to the door. They'll say, show us the money, or you can die right there on the doorstep. Okay, so sometimes I'll pigeonhole certain amounts of monies aside that I use to help with to buy medicines like malaria medicine or different kinds of antibiotics, or it could be surgeries that are needed while we are there. Something happens. It always happens. And so monies can be used to help in that area as well. So you can see that, there's a lot of things that we can do with our monies. Cameroon is a country of lost souls, about 14 million people that are there. And you've already seen how the church is not super huge, and so whatever we can do to help is always big. So it's time for me to go back to Africa. One of the things I made a deal with the elders here when I first came here was this: I said, what I need you guys to do is be able to take care of my needs. I need to pay my bills. I'd like for you to take care of my health insurance. But the deal breaker for me is I'm going to go to Africa every 2 years. I want to go to Africa. And if you don't want me to go to Africa, then you don't want to hire me, because I'm not going to come here. I'll come here, but I'm going to go to Africa for 2 years. And I do that not only to help them. I do that because it helps me. It helps me to be a better person. And it centers me and focuses me so I'm not so materialistic and not so a lot of other things that I shouldn't be. I think I help the congregations when I'm there. I think I help the churches when I'm there. I know Lori does. These seminars are so valuable. But I can't go there without you being a part of it. I know I can get over there and I can do the teaching, but there's so much other things that we can do. And we have plenty. So I would just encourage you to join right hands of fellowship with me and take care of some of the essentials that are there. So thanks for all your prayers, your encouragement. I think we have about a month and a half, and on January 20, we're gone. And we'll be there for about 27 days, and then we'll come back home. Any questions before I close? I'm done. So any questions?
The Bibles, are they in English?
Well, if we buy Bibles, we'll buy Bibles on the English side, and so we'll buy English Bibles. But when we're on the French side in Douala and so forth, then we'll buy French Bibles. We'll go to a bookstore. There's a Bible bookstore that is there, and we buy Bibles. We don't buy nice Bibles like this here, because these Bibles here will fall apart on. We buy Bibles that are usually hardback, hardbound, and so forth. We usually buy them like a Thompson chain Bible, because there's lots of study helps that are in that, different kinds of helps and so forth. So, but that's what we do. So we buy Bible. We just purchase the Bibles when we're there. Sometimes what I'll do is if I have, say if I were to have like $200 or $300 that have been given to me for Bibles, then it may be that I'll identify several preachers and so forth, and I'll say, let's buy those Bibles for them. Let's get them purchased and let's get them to them now. Or I may leave the money behind and they'll put it in their bank account there, and then as people need the Bibles, then we'll give them the Bibles. That kind of thing. What is the money exchange? Well, I don't know what it is now. I didn't ask Jim, but it used to be like anywhere from, at one time it was 600 francs for every dollar. Then it was 1,700 francs for every dollar. So I don't know what the exchange rate is there. What it generally is that if you buy something for 30,000 francs, then you spent $60. This is what it amounts to. Yeah, $60 is about what it comes out to. And so to buy like a Coke, which none of them better than they ever buy Cokes or soft drinks, because they just can't afford them because they're like $2, $3 for those things there. So you do the math, they don't buy them. And so that's usually how I can remember the exchange by the Diet Cokes that I drink or something like that. No, he's asking me what is Jim Corner's story. Jim Corner, it used to be a preacher in right outside of Cedar Hill, Texas. I can't remember the name of the congregation there. On my second trip that I made to Cameroon, I went with him. That was Jim's second trip. He went as a leader, and I went as a follower. And I told Jim, I said, you ought to do this for a living. You're great at this. Jim went home and quit, resigned his job, and became a full-time missionary who does World Bible School. He does World Bible School seminars and workshops almost every Sunday. And when he's not away doing that on Sundays, then he's in Cameroon. So he goes to Cameroon in June and in October. He does evangelism campaigns. They last for about a week long. So it's a 2-week trip. And then he does a seminar every year. And he does that in the month of February into March. And so he goes every year for the seminar. I go every other year on the seminar. So he has to find someone to teach on the year I don't go, and so forth. So that's his story. And so Jim Corner is one of the, in my estimation, one of the greatest evangelists in our brotherhood today. A great evangelist. I mean, he doesn't talk the stuff, he does the stuff. And so he is busy every week, World Bible School somewhere, or having a Bible study with someone, or working through the Cameroon mission effort that is there. Yeah. She asked, why do we go in February? Some of it's because of the weather. The weather, you're getting near the end of the dry season, so we don't have to fight weather. We don't have to fight rainy season or the monsoons or anything like that, and so we don't miss any days of teaching. The biggest drawback to going in that time of year is that's generally when the Africa Cup is being played, soccer, and so we could lose people who come to the seminar because they're watching soccer somewhere. And generally they don't have TVs, but they'll be gathered around a storefront where there's got a soccer game, and there will be 100 people around watching the soccer game, and so forth. So, yeah. Okay, so I think I put it in the bulletin today. The one way to do it is you can give me cash and designate where you want to go to, or you can, if you want a tax write-off, then you can write a check to the Linda Road Church of Christ. On the bottom corner where it says the memo is put Cameroon Mission Effort 2018, and then say Bibles, preachers, orphanage, whatever. I don't care. Well, you can just say, yeah, and you can do it that way. That way you would have like for instance, if someone in here wanted to give like $3,000, then that's a tax write-off that you have for the year of 20 that you can write off for whatever. So, or if you did $100, you can write that off, or $10. I don't care. I think I mentioned it doesn't matter how small or how big. Here's what happens here. I usually take money with me when I go over there, and I've taken anywhere from $3,000 up to $11,000 from this congregation over there. And when I come back, I always come back with empty pockets. Honestly, I come back broke because I spend it on, and what I don't spend, I leave in the bank. For instance, if I know there's roofs, then I'll tell Jim, what roofs do you think are coming down the line? He'll say, this congregation, this congregation, this congregation, maybe putting roofs on within the next 2 years. I said, okay. And so I'll leave money in the bank there and designate that for roofs. And so Vincent, which is another guy, in a servant that there's a minister, he'll make a travel to that congregation to make sure they're ready to go. He won't give them money. And the reason why they don't give them money, because he says, if we give them the money, they'll eat the money. Which means they'll use the money for what is necessary at the moment and worry about the roof later. So we wait until the roof is ready to go. The trusses are up, the walls are up, the trusses are up. All they need is the zincs, and then Vincent will go and look at it. And then he'll say, I need this much money out. Claude will give him the money, and then he'll deliver it to the congregation, and then he'll take a picture of the zincs when they get out. That's how that kind of works. So, okay. I think that's all I have to say then. Thank you for being so patient. And so if you need to respond in any way, here's a great time to do so while together we stand and sing and give you that opportunity.